So I have got to tell you that my theology nerd got woken up big time. I mean, stuff that I went, "Phew," had never heard before. And I was so excited, and I can't wait to share it with you. And normally I don't share my sermons because my husband Danny wants to hear them first thing. And I had sat on this information for 24 hours and I couldn't stand it anymore. And I said, I'm sorry, I've got to tell you this stuff. So I came across this guy. His name's Tim Mackie, and he has a PhD in Hebrew and the intertestamental Bible, which is the part from where the Old Testament ends and the New Testament begins. There's about 200 years there, and it's not used in our canon, in the Protestant canon. You will find it expands in the Jewish Bibles, and it's covered in the Catholic Bibles. They have it there, but it's just really fascinating stuff, and that's what he did his PhD dissertation on. So it was like when I found it, I'm so excited about this. Okay, so I want to show you a picture. Can we get the picture up there? All right, who's seen this picture before? I imagine all of you have. This was created in 1941, and it's the most famous picture of Jesus ever. There have been over 500 million copies of this picture made. And you can buy it in a frame, or you can buy it on a postcard, or you can buy it on a magnet, or you can buy it on any possible thing that you would want. So this guy is obviously Northern European. What do you see when you see this Jesus? What looking at this picture, what are some of the emotions? What physically, what do you see? Actually, this one, I looked at it really close. This one actually does have brown eyes. I was surprised at that. Does it? Well, and it could be. When I was looking at it on my computer, he had brown eyes because I was checking for that. But yes. Anything else? Jesus, yes, very loving and caring. Absolutely. Absolutely. He looks like a hippie, yes.
Very serene.
Yes. Yes, you like the little golden glow around him? Yeah. His hair is very well coiffed, too, because you know that they went to the beauty shop all the time there to get your hair just perfect. And his beard, too, you know, he must have gone to Sports Clips and gotten the real expensive package to get it all trimmed as well as it was. Okay, so one of the ways that you know this is a Northern European Jesus, not only is his skin color, but you can tell his nose comes down, and anthropologists have learned that when your nose comes down and it kind of has a beak or it has a point to it, the reason for that is that people that have that come from a place where it's really cold, and the purpose of that is it's long and skinny, and so when you breathe in that cold air, it's got time to stay in this area and warm up before it goes down into your lungs. So anytime you see someone with a beaky-like nose or whatever, you know that their ancestry came from someplace that was really cold. Okay, so we've got this Jesus, and you can almost hear the angels go, oh, can't you? When you see this picture of him. Okay, so this Jesus, you just can trust. You know Jesus is going to be there. This is really cool. All right, so in 2002, a group of British New Testament scholars got together, and they went over to the Holy Lands, and they worked with archaeologists over there, and they collected a whole lot of bones, mostly skulls, from people that died around the time Jesus lived, and they were able, due to the new CSI equipment and everything they have, to make cast of those and to be able to come up with what Jesus probably did look like. Now, we're not saying this is Jesus by any means, but show the other picture. All right. So he had Mideastern hair, which is not very well coiffed. It would have been real out to everywhere. It would have been real long and scraggly. His beard would have been real long and scraggly. Do you see his nose? His nose is shorter, and people that live closer to the equator have shorter and fatter noses, and the purpose of that is that it's warm there, And so they're able to take shorter breaths and take in that warm air, and this larger part down here helps cool the air before it goes down into the lungs, because it gathers here just for a brief second, long enough to cool it down so it doesn't go straight to the lungs and burn the lungs up. So have you ever breathed real hard with your mouth open and it goes straight down to your lungs, and it makes your throat sore or makes your throat dry and your lungs kind of warm? And so that's why our noses are there. So now you've got a little anthropological study there. He's got wider eyes, he's got the darker eyes, and he's got the darker skin. Okay, so do you think they would have sold 500 million copies of this face for people to put in their house and to give away, to send on a postcard? So what I want to point out with this is that all of us have ideas of what Jesus, who Jesus is, what Jesus should look like, what Jesus should do. And sometimes they come up against what Jesus probably really did look like and what Jesus' purpose on this earth was for. And that's exactly what's going on this walk to Emmaus. Now take a look at Jesus one more time. All right. So Warner Solomon is the artist that drew the first one. I just want to throw his name out there and give him credit. But this one again is from the CSI camp. Okay, so there's two disciples, and one of them is named Cleopas. The other one is not. So the other could be male, could be female. Some think it's Cleopas' wife. Some people don't know. Some people say that it's the disciple that Jesus loved. I mean, you can just make up whatever you want to, because we don't know who the other person is. But they're walking and they're talking, and this third person comes up to them and says, "Hey, what are you talking about?" And they look at him kind of dumbfounded and say, "You must be the only person alive that hasn't heard what's going on." And so they start telling this other person what's going on, and they're a little upset, and you can kind of see why they might be, because disciples at this point in time, when they said they were going to follow Jesus, they left everything. So can you imagine leaving everything, donating 3 years to your life, knowing that this person is going to do these great things, and then he willingly goes and gets killed? So yeah, these guys walking probably have a right to be a little put out, because their expectations weren't met. Just like when we look at this picture of Jesus, this really isn't our expectation of what Jesus should look like. And so these disciples just can't figure out what happened. Okay, so this is the part that's going to, or at least it did in my mind, blew my mind. These people are walking to the road to where? Emmaus. What does Emmaus mean to you? Anything? All right. What if I threw out the date April 16th, 1947? What does that mean to you? Everybody immediately knows what that is. If you went to first century Jerusalem and said Emmaus, those Jews would immediately know what that meant. So this is the really cool stuff. Okay, so that time between when the Old Testament stopped and the New Testament started, 200 years. The Syrians had come in and they had gone into Jerusalem and they had just annihilated. Can you imagine what you'd feel like if you came in here and, I don't know, some oppressive Christian group or non-Christian group came in here and broke all the stained glass windows and tore up all of this stuff here and took the cross and you would just feel so violated. And so that's what had happened is the Syrians had come in and they had taken over Jerusalem. And so they had this great plan, and this plan was Rome still owned Jerusalem. And so the Romans were saying, all right, you're sitting here now, you're going to have to pay us the taxes that the Jews were paying, but now you've run them off. And so they didn't want to have to pay Rome, so they had this great idea that they would go in and they would capture all of the Jewish people that were there, and then they would sell them off for slaves, and they would take that money and they would pay the Romans. And this was a great idea if you were Syrian, but not so much if you were Jewish. So the Jewish weren't happy about this, and so the Syrians had left Jerusalem, and they were slowly making their way of plundering all the way through, and they were in this place around Emmaus. They were there. Now, there was this group of Jewish people, and they were led by the Maccabees family. Maybe you've heard of 1st and 2nd Maccabees. It's in this intertestamental thing. And the head guy there was Judah, or Jude. And it's real interesting if you read 1st Maccabees and 2nd Maccabees. One of them says that there were 3,000 people, and then they let all the people that were married leave, so that got it down to 1,500. But somehow it's like a fishing story, and by the time it gets to 2nd Maccabees, there's 8,000 people, Jews, that are going in to do it. They kind of embellish it a little bit. But what they do is they are able to go in and have this huge battle at Emmaus, and they are able to get rid of all of the Syrians and get them out of there and take over Emmaus. So it's a huge force of power and a huge win. And then they're able to get back into Jerusalem and go back into their temple and see that their temple had been decimated. Okay, so they go into the temple, and all they find is one oil candle that still has some oil in it, and has about as much oil for one day. And so they light that, and they begin trying to clean up the temple. And so they try to bless the temple and rededicate the temple and all of that. And they think they've got to work really hard because there's just enough oil in there for one day. But what happens is the next day they go in to do it. Now, you realize they didn't have lights. They didn't have all the things we do. So when it got dark, it got really dark. And they didn't have doors and windows. They had doors, but they didn't have windows in these temples, so they were dark inside. So the candles were real important. So the second day they went in and they tried to light it, and it lit. And the third day, and the fourth day, and the fifth day, and the sixth day, and the seventh day, and the eighth day, and the ninth day. 9 candles. What Jewish celebration do you know of that has 9 candles for 9 days? Hanukkah. Exactly. The rededication of the temple after the Syrians came. So do you see that connection and how powerful that is? So these 2 men are walking. They have been in Jerusalem. They have been in their temple, and who they thought was going to take care of everything can't take care of everything anymore because he got put on the cross. So they are going back to Emmaus, to the place that they last had the stronghold, that they last had. It was kind of like their home of our powerful people took over the Syrians from here, and so we're going to go back here and we're going to regroup. So Emmaus starts meaning something really important to them that it didn't mean to us. So they're there and they're doing that. And then as they're walking and they're talking and Jesus is telling them all the stuff that has happened, they're still not getting it. And so they get back to their house, and Jesus is ready to go on, and they finally remember their southern manners that their mamas taught them. And they go, "Oh no, please come in and eat with us." And he goes, "Okay." Now this is where everything flips, because when you are a guest in someone's house, you are supposed to sit and do what they tell you to do. But Jesus goes to the table, and he has them sit, and he takes the bread, and he blesses it, and he breaks it, and he serves them. Oh, chills. And suddenly they remember back, not even a week ago, when they sat in that upper room and Jesus again there took the bread and he blessed it and he broke it, and he served them all. And he took the wine, and he blessed it, and he gave it to them and drank it. And so suddenly they're getting Passover, which again goes back to the time when Pharaoh let the slaves go finally, and Moses was the captor there. And then they go forward with that into expecting to be let go of slaves at Emmaus, and the Maccabees come in and they are able to force the people back. So their redemption and their redeemer that they're looking for is this strong man that comes in on a black stallion. He comes in with a horde of people. He comes in with his sword drawn, and he's ready to go in, and with violence and with vengeance and persecution, he can go in and he can save them. That's what these people are looking for. And what they get is one guy in a dressy robe coming in on a little bitty, it's quite clear that this is a newborn donkey or colt. It's not an adult. This is what they get. And instead of standing up to the people that be and saying, you get out of here, and knocking them down, he says, okay, I'll go. And they beat him, and he doesn't say anything, and they just are so mean and cruel to him, and he dies on the cross. They don't know what to do with this. They are looking for the other Jesus, and this is the Jesus they get. And they're going, you're not matching my description. Who are you? And then in the breaking of the bread and the drinking of the cup, they're like, oh, wow. Have you ever had an oh, wow moment in your own life? Especially those of you that have the gift of sharing every thought that comes into your mind verbally, immediately as it comes in. One of those times that gets you speechless, that you don't have any words, that it is so mind-blowing that all you can do is go, oh, wow. That's what happened for those people at Emmaus. And they immediately went back. They got it. That Jesus was powerful. More powerful than anything any of the other people had done. Because what he had done is overcome death and the grave and given them eternal life. Mind blowing. Their hearts had been opened, and they could see the power in that. And they couldn't see it before because there was so much noise in their lives. There was so much, this is what we thought was going to happen, and this is what did happen, and I don't know what to do with it. So much turmoil. And once they quieted down with the bread and the wine, their hearts burned inside of them. I love that. Their hearts burned with the word. And they were able to see Jesus again for the first time. So I'm going to invite you, when you come up for communion today, to receive it and realize this is why Jesus died on the cross, was for you. And instead of saying amen, say, wow. And take that wine and drink it and realize this is Jesus' blood that dripped down his face. And say, wow. And then return back to your seat and just sit in that moment. Because this guy loved you so much. He might not look the way you want him to look, but he sure loves you more than you can ever imagine. And all God's people say, amen.